first pre-rut. Bringing a doe up through here. Thank you. You know, and all the work. Cutting cedars, and we burned that. And this was all timber making this food plot years ago. This is called Pops, after my dad, because he loved to hunt this area. Flood of emotions right now, and so I'm gonna enjoy this, and then we're gonna come back, you know, in a day or two, and I'll film all the where this buck's been based on our Moultrie mobiles and share with you the history. But right now, I see those big old antlers sticking up, and it's all good.
Last year during the rut, we started getting several Moultrie mobile videos of a buck we started calling Righty. We called him Righty because his right antler was far off the side of his head. It was not in a normal position. And we assumed that that antler had been knocked over during a fight, given the rut, and didn't know if he'd survive. It was so far over, we thought maybe the skull had been cracked or totally broken. However, during the next few weeks, Righty kept showing up on our cameras. During December, Daniel was hunting from a redneck blind, and close in front of him, Righty stepped out, just head down, munching on the green cover food plot. Bucks tend to get on that food cover pattern after the rut.
Nice buck. Now that I can get eyes on him and see him, I mean, we're 10 yards from him. I can actually see that it's almost like his pedicle is off the side of his head, and it doesn't look like it was an injury, which is good, because I was scared that with that injury, it would open that up and maybe cause a brain abscess, and we'd actually lose that deer. But he looks very healthy. Both him and this yearling are head down in the green cover seed broadcast blend.
Given these observations, it was likely the buck would make it to the next season, so Daniel gave him a pass. Sure enough, this past July, Righty showed up in some of our Moultrie mobile pictures and videos, one ridge to the east of where Daniel had seen him last fall. Righty seemed to hang around that ridge throughout the summer. However, based on our trail cameras, he seemed to shift to the north once the velvet was off. During October 12th this season, which was Missouri's firearms antlerless only season, Daniel saw Righty in an area we call Bigfoot Valley. He stepped out of a hardwood ridge and started munching on some native forage. This location was 1.8 miles from where Daniel saw Righty last year. I think it's fun sharing these observations and distance, and that's a straight line measured on a map, not up and down the hills and hollers of the Ozark Mountains, to give people an idea of how far bucks travel. And remember, bucks are unique individuals just like humans. Daniel and I travel all over North America, literally consulting, and I've got buddies in high school that probably hasn't left the county where we graduated in all these years. It was getting dark right after Daniel saw Righty, and rather than alert him, let Righty be conditioned to a hunter in that area, he gave a coyote howl to ease Righty out of the field and into the timber. That way Daniel could exit the blind without alerting Righty and potentially other deer in the area to danger. When possible, we prefer to have someone come pick us up with a UTV. We use UTVs all the time, prescribe fire, running traps, working on food plots, checking cameras, etc. Deer on our property are very conditioned to the sound of UTV and do not associate them with danger. When we don't have the option of someone coming to pick us up like Daniel did in that afternoon, we use a coyote howl to try to gently push deer, especially adult deer, out of the opening so we can exit without them seeing us get out of the blind or stand. Fast forward to the last couple of days of October, and our Moultrie mobiles were picking up Righty just up the ridge from where Daniel had seen him during Missouri's antlerless only season. It appeared Righty had lost a lot of weight and likely been traveling a lot during the pre-rut. Research shows that bucks rarely leave their home range during the rut, but put on a lot more steps than normal during the pre-rut and rut, seeking receptive does, and this can result in a lot of body weight loss. In fact, they can lose up to 30% of their weight. That takes a 200-pound buck down to 140 pounds. That's why when we compare pictures of Righty during July to October, his body looks like a totally different deer. During the morning of November 1st, Righty hit a scrape at the edge of a small hidey-hole food plot we call Blackberry, and it's ideally positioned between a couple of large feeding plots and a bedding area. A lot of deer use that as a travel corridor. We call it a pinch point, using that food plot to kind of pinch deer in, and Righty was in that area. Several years ago, we had a crew fell almost all the cedars on that ridge. And then we followed up a year or two later with prescribed fire to stimulate the native grasses and forbs to grow. That plan has worked extremely well. There's a lot of native food and cover on that ridge. We have several travel corridors or pinch points in there. And right below that ridge is the valley where Daniel had seen Righty during mid-October. This point has proven to be a great travel corridor for bucks during the pre-rut, likely because it's a really easy way to go from low to high or change elevations without going up a steep ridge, and there's cover nearby so bucks can scent check for does. We have a stand on the northeast corner of that plot that's on that ridge, elevator ridge, and we've had some great hunts out of that stand. Matter of fact, a couple of years ago, Daniel tagged a nice buck out of that stand on November 2nd. But this year, we had a little extra MRI, most recent information. Due to an extremely wicked drought, a lot of our food plots weren't looking too good, so Tim recently drilled in cereal rye. It's extremely cold hardy. You can get away with planting it late in the year. And when Tim was drilling that field, he noticed several rubs on one side of the plot. The conditions were good to hunt that stand in the northeast corner of Pops on November 1st. So Wyatt and I headed out to see if Righty or another buck would be using that travel corridor.
It is the afternoon of November 1st, and Wyatt and I at the very southeast end of a field we call Pops, bedding just 50-60 yards down here, where we've cut a bunch of cedars in the past and actually cut a U around this. So got up quiet. The sun is just about below the trees. I can start to feel a little cool in the air. Hopefully the deer will be on their feet soon.
Wyatt and I hadn't been settled in the stand long when we heard something coming quickly up the mountain towards that pinch. Righty was pushing a doe and it was happening quick, and no excuses. My shot was high and I took Righty in the spine. A quick follow-up shot and Righty was ours.
Such a blessing, oh my gosh, such a blessing. Man, I see those big old antlers sticking up, and it's all good. We called this deer Righty because of this. If you look at it, it's way over here. Here's the original antler pedestal or base. Some kind of injury or accident
pushed it way over here, and you can tell you probably maybe can't tell, but it's elongated. Man, I'm sure you can tell I'm excited. I am so pumped up to harvest this buck. He was on our list. He had really cool features, and I'll be proud when I get this cleaned up that here go on my wall. I don't want to make any assumptions, so we got all the meat and everything off Righty. Took that head to my buddy Pete Dickinson just down the road a ways. I've worked with Pete for, 20 plus years, does a great job. And Pete's promised me he's gonna have that skull cleaned up really quickly. And I wanna see what's going on. Was it broken? Did it heal back? What happened there? And once we get the skull back, we'll share that with you rather than me make some assumptions right now. I think it's gonna be a very interesting end to Righty's story. Once Wyatt and I got done with our little personal celebration, we called Daniel, and Daniel graciously come in the tracker like I talked about before, brought the UTV out.
Heck yeah.
Loaded up Righty, come back here to the office, took some better pictures here, had a celebration, and then we got busy processing the meat. There are several lessons from the whole Righty story throughout the years. Daniel passed that deer, letting him get a year older. I think a lot of hunters might have said, oh, that buck's been wounded, we're gonna take him out, or he looks funky, we're gonna get those genes out of gene pool. Clearly, this was from an injury and not a genetic reason that Righty's antler was way off to the side. Second, bucks that spay in their home range during the pre-rut. This is well known, but sometimes it's easy to forget and we get locked into hunting the same stand or blind over and over and over. We used our moultrie mobiles and our past experience. It's always important if you hunt the same property like we do to use that past experience, because a lot of times if an area is hot November 1st, it's going to be hot the next November 1st. And I think that's an extremely valuable lesson that's easy to overlook. Righty had lost a huge amount of weight, and I think it goes back with that injury and the weight loss to the stress of the rut. You want to make sure you got plenty of groceries, you're doing a good job managing your habitat, because no matter how good the quality of the habitat, bucks are going to lose a lot of weight during the rut, and they need to recover to go through the winter in good condition and actually have a chance of expressing more of their genetic potential the following year. This wasn't just a random stand, and I mentioned briefly, we had felled cedars, we had burned, we've done a lot of things to make that pinch point a pinch point. It was just a ridge coming down off the main ridge when we bought the property, and I'm sure deer traveled it some, but the frequency of bucks using that area now, my daughter Ray, myself, Daniel, we've had a lot of good hunts there, and that's due to the habitat design. I hope you learned something from our experiences with Righty, and even more importantly, I hope you get outside and enjoy creation. But our ultimate goal, while we're live here, is to have a personal relationship with the Creator. To every day be intentional about seeking His will, living that will by applying it to our lives. Thanks for watching Growing Deer.